Where do you think your blind spots are? You know, we talk so much about money mindset here on the Money and You show. Do you think you have blind spots in the financial area or maybe in other areas of your career or your professional life? We're going to talk about that today with a special guest. Be right back. Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello and welcome to the Money and You show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and I am super excited about today's show. I know you're going to love it. We have an expert here with us today to talk about a lot of different areas of leadership, your professional life, and one of my favorite topics, your blind spots, your thinking around what you're doing and your success. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kim Ades. She is the founder of Frame of Mind Coaching and co-founder of the Journal That Talks Back. Recognized as a pioneer in the field of leadership coaching and thought mastery, Kim uses her unique philosophy and direct coaching style to help leaders identify their blind spots and learn to direct their thinking to achieve extraordinary results. Author, speaker, entrepreneur, coach, and mom of 5, Kim is dedicated to teaching her powerful coaching process to leaders, executives, and entrepreneurs worldwide. Kim, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited. I read about you, and the more I read, the more excited I was. And I cannot wait to talk to you about the Journal That Talks Back. I was so intrigued by that. So do you want to give us a little background on how you decided to do this work?
Absolutely. So I've been coaching leaders, executives, entrepreneurs. I call them the highly driven population for the past 18 years. I have a team of coaches in Canada and the US, and they all follow the same model of coaching, which I call the Frame of Mind Coaching methodology. And interestingly enough, actually, all of our coaches started off as clients. They had such an amazing experience, and they said, how do I learn how to do this? So now we train people to coach, in addition to coaching them directly. So, I mean, that's what we do. Again, we've been doing that for a long time. And if I can give you a little bit of history, before I started this coaching, I owned another company, and we were building simulations for the purpose of helping companies decide who they should hire and who they shouldn't hire. So they were assessments that would identify who would be a top performer in any given field. And so what we did was we tried to give them a sense of their process and how they would hire people. And what we discovered was that when it came to skills, when it came to personality, there was one key differentiating factor that would supersede all other factors when it came to performance. Hey, Michelle, are you still there?
I am. We have a little delay, so I'm just waiting and listening and fascinated by what you're saying. So I am absolutely hearing you.
Okay. So what we discovered was that if a person had a higher level of emotional resilience, they would be much more likely to succeed than others. And so the question is, where does emotional resilience come from? What is that really about? And so what we discovered was that a person has a high level of emotional resilience when they are able to bounce back from adversity with speed and agility, but more specifically, that they are able to leverage the adversity. So sometimes people have money issues. Sometimes they have money struggles. The way they deal with those struggles will determine the outcome. So if they have a money blow, let's call it, and they fall, and they stay down for a very long time, and then they use it as a way to define themselves, it becomes hard to get up and go on to the next thing and leverage that previous experience. And so that became the backdrop for me starting a new coaching business, where what I was focused on is looking at how people think about everything to determine the results they're getting. So one of the things we definitely talk about is success, financial success, career success, relationship success, all of that.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up. And in some of the reading I did about you, that was one of the things that I really found really wonderful, because it's so helpful to think of all of this as a holistic sort of entity or process, because, a lot of what I talk about with respect to career is how important it is for you to find meaning and fulfillment in your career, because that will leak out into all the other aspects of your life. And it does, all the other ones do that too. So if your relationships or your money are having issues, it's going to affect your professional life. And so I love that you sort of allow for that and embrace that in part of your coaching. I thought that was really a little extra special in what I was reading about what you do.
What we were looking at was that, a lot of coaching companies help you figure out what you should do in order to succeed.
Yeah.
And that sounds very reasonable, right?
Yeah.
So in order to get from point A to point B, there are these 10 steps you should do. And most coaches say, okay, let's identify those steps. And as a coach, I'll hold you accountable. My feeling was that, hold on a minute, that's not necessarily the right picture. There's something messed up about that. People know what they should be doing. Yeah. They still don't do it. And the question is why? What's actually at play here? What gets in their way? And that's what I was interested in discovering, is what's stopping people from doing the things they know they need to do in order to get to where they want to get to.
I so agree with that. And that was the road I traveled with money, because there's nothing, incredibly hard about managing your money well. I mean, there's so much information out there, you could easily do it, but people don't do it. And so I think, if you're coaching long enough, you do get to that point where you recognize what's most important really is getting underneath those kinds of things and trying to understand those thoughts that are preventing you from doing exactly what you know you need to do. And of course, I'm speaking like it isn't also me going through this all the time. I have more of an awareness at this point, but you certainly learn from watching yourself as well. So, yeah, I love that.
Exactly. But money is a loaded topic, right? Money is filled with, it's kind of like, it's filled with tension sometimes, just the subject of money. And so the way that we feel about money, the way we think about money, the way that we interact with money will determine what our money outlooks are, what the forecast is.
Right. And I know you're working with high-level professionals, and, I think a lot of the myth out there is that as soon as you get to a certain income level, all of this goes away. And I know that you're working with people who probably are at these high income levels, and yet they have a lot of the same negative fear-based thoughts that everybody else does. So can you speak to that?
I work with people. Yeah, I work with people who have very prominent jobs, whether it's in a corporation or whether they run their own companies, it doesn't matter. And it's remarkable to me how many people who make tons of money, where their income is like really at the upper scale of salary levels, they still struggle with money. They still struggle to hold on to their money, to keep their money, to invest their money, to multiply their money. It's like it just runs right through their fingers. And it's common for me to see high income earners who still, they would look at their own accounts and say that they're broke.
Right. And so I'm assuming this is problematic for them and that you're helping them with some of this. And can you give us maybe a case study or an example of how you might, speak to somebody like that or help them in some way?
Yeah. Well, it's really rather interesting, right? Because, my job, I'm not a financial expert. I don't know where to invest that's the best. I don't know, where you get the best interest rates or anything like that. That's not my strength. But my strength is understanding how a person's thinking leads to the outcomes they're getting. And so my job when I coach someone is to understand their values. Like, where are they spending their money? And is that aligned with their goals? And why are they spending money there? And is that of highest value for them. And so I find, for example, I'm working with a gentleman right now who's a very prominent professional in the financial industry, actually. So he even understands money. He works with money. He helps companies with mergers and acquisitions. And he earns an incredible salary, but he feels like he's broke. And so the question is, where's all the money going? Like, how's that money getting spent? And what we're seeing is it's getting spent in ways that are not necessarily aligned with long-term financial goals in any shape or form. And so now we're digging a little bit below the surface. Like, why are you spending money that way? And, there's a prestige issue. There's a kind of need for certain social status. There's a desire to please a wife. There is, a friendship circle that lives at a certain level. There are all these elements that aren't really aligned with the person's goals. And so now we go, so why are you doing all of that? Is that what you want to be doing? And what we discover is that a lot of times there's a pressure to spend money in ways that are really inconsistent with a person's long-term or even short-term desires.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is super interesting for people to hear, because it isn't how much money that it's a help, obviously, to earn more. And we all want to strive to earn, in accordance with our value. And we should not be under earning. However, just because you're earning a lot, that's not the answer to all of these issues. Again, it goes back to your thoughts. And as you're speaking, I'm wondering, is he or somebody like him operating almost automatically? Or is he consciously thinking about what he's doing and making a conscious decision to keep up with all these people and do what he feels he maybe should do or wants to be seen as?
Yeah, I don't think, I think that he does it as though he has no choice. So it's not that it's automatic because he's conscious. He's saying, yeah, we spend money on, vacations and restaurants and food and, this social life, wine and, that kind of thing, like that upper end life, which is great. But so there's a consciousness about where money's going, but there's no ability to stop the train, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
That becomes more difficult, because there's a lot of emotional baggage at play when it comes to stopping the train. It's like a fast-moving, heavy train with a ton of momentum. Suddenly you have to stop it. So how does that happen? So it means you're pulling the plug on some of your social activities. It's hard to say no to people. It's hard to say no, like, I'm not playing in that one. I'm not going to be joining you. Or let's do something different. Let's stay in instead of going out and spending $5,000 a night on a restaurant. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I know exactly.
That requires a different conversation. It's not just about money. It's about how you feel about yourself. It's about being able to say no. It's about being able to have difficult conversations. It's about taking a whole social structure and turning the page on that structure. And so what started off as a money conversation is much, much deeper. It's about your beliefs about your value if you're not playing in that league, right? So am I important? Are people going to want to hang out with me? If I don't do all of these things, will I still matter in this circle of people? And on and on and on and on. And so when we're talking about money, we're always talking about something else, because money is just a modality of exchange, right? So we're always talking about something else. The question is, what are we talking about? And for him, it's a way to keep his relationships alive. And so now we're saying, well, wait a minute. Are they after you just, they like hanging around you because of the money you spend or because of who you are? And what exactly are you wanting in relationships? And so now, right, we're going a whole lot deeper.
Yeah. And I love that, going deeper on this topic is what it takes. It's what it needs. And when we don't do that as a society, money is a rather surface level conversation. So I love that you brought that up. And, again, it's still about thoughts. It's still about thinking that your friends won't want to hang out with you. And as you're speaking again, I'm thinking, it's more the fear of actually trying to set some boundaries and trying to do these things, because the reality of it is most likely going to be less traumatizing or scary or whatever than the thoughts about it. I think.
So if you're okay with it, I'd love to talk about the concept of setting boundaries.
Oh,
Can
I'd
we
love
discuss
that, actually. Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of setting boundaries. Are you shocked?
I'm never shocked by much,
Okay.
but yeah.
So I'll tell you why. Because when you set boundaries, basically what you're saying is, that's not what I want. I'm creating a hard line in the sand, and you're not allowed to cross that line, or I'm not allowed to cross that line. Either way, I'm creating a line in the sand to prevent from what I don't want from happening. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
So what I want to do is not worry about boundaries. I want to help people go for what they do want instead of what they don't want. A boundary is preventative. Right? So I don't want that. I want someone to really give some thought to, what is the life you want to live?
Right.
Financially, career-wise, relationship-wise. What does that look like? In order for us to define that, we have to go for that, as opposed to keep our eye strictly peeled on the boundary. We have to define and go for that vision of what we would rather have. And so that means leaving our boundaries behind and defining a picture or a vision of the goal ahead of us and moving in that direction.
I think that you can flip it a little bit and make it more about, I'm saying yes to myself in a lot of different ways. So yeah, I love that though. I think that's...
So exactly that. I want people to figure out what they're saying yes to, as opposed to what they're saying no to. Right? So instead of, no, I'm not, going out for dinner. No, I'm not spending money. No, I'm not doing this. Yes, I'm staying in. Yes, I'm saving my money. Yes, I'm choosing selectively where I'm going out. Yes, I am excited about creating an investment fund. Yeah, that kind of thing. I want the yeses as opposed to the nos.
Yeah, and I really love that too, because it's also the way you think about that. If you're saying to yourself, oh my gosh, I can no longer go on vacations and I can't afford to do X, Y, and Z anymore, that's a very negative kind of look at what you're doing. Whereas if you're saying, it's not that you can't afford it, it's that you're making a new choice to invest more right now and, grow whatever. You really have to watch the words that you use as well.
100%. But I'll give you a whole different example.
Yeah,
so
great.
I'm working with another gentleman who is in sales, and he's a very high performer. But recently his deal got changed at work, and the deal wasn't necessarily a good deal for him. Okay. And he was living in this deal, and suddenly his income dropped by 2/3.
Wow. Okay.
From the previous year. And so part of the conversation was, hey, you need to go and renegotiate this deal. Like, this deal doesn't make sense for you. You need to renegotiate. And his initial response was, no, I have to keep my word. I made this deal and I can't renege on my promise. Like, this is what I said I would agree to. I said, yes, but it doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Right? And so it's not about money. It's about the ideology of going back and having the conversation. It's about the ego involved. It's about the shame going back in his mind related to, well, I made a mistake. I made a bad deal. I need to renegotiate. Right? So we had to address that. It wasn't like the money is the last piece of the puzzle. The real issue is, okay, so I had a conversation. I ended up with a bad arrangement for myself. And now I feel uncomfortable, guilty, shameful about going back and saying, this isn't working for me.
Yeah, very interesting. What ultimately did he do?
Well, now he and I worked out like some of the rationale for being able to go back. And I pulled on other examples where, he has no problem addressing, for example, if the prices in his organization went up, he has no problem going to a client and saying, hey, our prices went up. Things have changed. And so I pulled from other sources to say, change happens. We renegotiate all the time. And you're good with it as a salesperson, but you're not representing yourself well.
Yeah.
Right? So he started to see all these kind of ways that his thinking was really interfering with his ability to go and have that conversation. So I had to look at it from that angle as opposed to the money angle. It wasn't about, it's not,
It's not
never
about the money. Yeah.
It's never about money.
Yeah, pretty interesting. Frame of mind coaching. So I can guess as to, the importance of the words in that title, but what is frame of mind coaching about?
So again, we coach the highly driven population. And what I'm really, really interested in at all times is the relationship between the way a person thinks and the outcomes or the results they're getting in their lives. So if somebody comes and says, I'm not happy, I'm frustrated, I'm not pleased with where I am in life, my relationships, my financial status, my career, I'm uncomfortable, I'm dissatisfied, I'm just not happy.
Right.
And what we want to do is we want to look at the thinking that leads to this unhappiness or dis-ease, right? And so a lot of times, as I was saying before, we want to move to, okay, well, all we have to do is these 3 things and then you'll be happy. But my belief is we think first and then we take action, or we don't take action, right? So what I want to always do is start at the source. What are the thoughts that creates this level of dissatisfaction? How are you thinking about things? And how is this thinking affecting what you do and what you don't do, and ultimately the results you're getting in your life? So, for example, if somebody, and I'm using a completely non-money related subject here.
Totally fine.
But if you say, I really, really want to be in a relationship, but you're not willing to go out on a date, and you're not willing to, socialize, if you're not willing to try different options, then your likelihood of being in a relationship are going to be significantly stunted. Right. And then the question is, so what's stopping you from doing the things that might lead you to a relationship?
Yes.
And that's the question I'm interested in. It's not like, have you ever heard of Simon Sinek?
Oh, love Simon Sinek. Yes.
Yeah, I love Simon Sinek too. But he says, let's start with the why.
Yeah.
Right? My question is, let's start with the why not. Right? What's getting in your way? What's stopping you? Because your why and my why and his why and her why, they're all the same. The reason we want anything is because we believe it'll make us happier.
Right.
We believe it will fulfill us more. My question is, okay, so if that's the goal, then what's actually stopping you? What's getting in the way? What are the beliefs? What are the thoughts that are preventing you from taking action that will lead to the outcomes you're looking for?
A great question. Absolutely. And what do you find when people give you answers to that question of, why aren't you doing X, Y, and Z?
Well, here's the thing. Like it could be anything. Like earlier today, I was talking to someone who is, she's a mom, she has a special needs son, and she's homeschooling him. And she's an amazing, amazing human being, but she gets upset when her son doesn't do his homework.
Yeah.
Right. And so for her, her identity is tied to that. If my son does his homework, then I'm doing a good job as a homeschooling mom.
Right.
And so we have false beliefs about everything. And those false beliefs lead us to certain actions or inactions. And then we say, well, why aren't we reaching our goals? Because we have beliefs that mess us up. And what we need to do is look internally and examine our beliefs and ask ourselves if those beliefs actually make sense in leading us to the outcomes we're looking for. Right?
Absolutely.
So we're doing that with every subject, whether it's parenting or marriage or starting a business or making a lot of money, whatever the subject is, the way we think about it will determine the outcomes we get. And if we're not getting the outcomes that we want, usually we go, okay, well, then the plan isn't working. What should I do differently? But I want people to stop doing anything differently. First, start looking at your thinking.
I couldn't agree more.
And when your thinking is lined up with the goal, then start doing.
And don't you think really taking some kind of an action is easier for people than stopping and trying to examine their thinking? I think people tend to just want to, try something else and do something else. And, they want to bypass this most important thing.
Right. So because it's very abstract. So that's why when we coach people, we have a very, very specific process that we use that allows clients to see their thinking more readily. So what we do is we start off with a 10-week coaching program. And, there's a call every single week. We record every call and we ask our clients to listen to the recording so that they can start to hear how they speak, how they sound, what they're saying, what their emotional state is. And when they listen to their recordings, they get like a flood of personal awareness. Suddenly they're starting to pay attention to who they are, how they sound, what they're saying, the stories they're telling over and over again. In between every call, we ask our clients to journal in a private and secure online journal every single day with their coach. So at the beginning of the week, they get a journaling question or a prompt and they start journaling. And every day that they journal, their coach reads and responds to their journal by asking more questions, by probing, by digging, by encouraging, by challenging some of those beliefs. And that process allows the coach to really, really get to know the client and propel them very far in a short period of time. And so that process allows us to look at the beliefs.
Yeah, I wanted to commend you on I that journaling method that you have is I just absolutely I'm a huge journaling fan. I send every new client a journal. I think journaling has incredible value, and I thought that was a really clever, smart, effective kind of way to do coaching. And I thought that was really impressive.
Imagine if you can read a person's thoughts every single day. How much more equipped would you be as a coach? It's mind-blowing how much further we can propel our clients when we know how they see the world and how they see the world with respect to every subject that they encounter on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because if people are a little stumped on how to connect with their thoughts or their feelings or any of that, journaling is truly, in my opinion, one of the best ways. And it doesn't necessarily happen right away. It is a practice that you find your way through, and there are many ways to do it, obviously. But I love that. I thought that was amazing. And do you find that most people do find that the journaling is a big game changer for them?
Well, so it's not just journaling.
Right.
So journaling by itself, I think, is amazing. I journal every single day. It's extremely important, very therapeutic. Yeah. It calms you down. It gives you clarity. It allows you to point yourself in the right direction. It does all kinds of really cool things. But when you journal with a coach who's reading and responding on the other side, it's a game changer, truly a game changer, because suddenly your thoughts, you have the opportunity to reflect on them, right? So usually we just think our thoughts and then we go on our merry way. But now, because our thoughts are the guide, they're the seed of our lives, right? Our thoughts will determine what happens. And if we're not happy with what happens, we need to take a moment to look at what are we thinking to generate the outcomes we're getting. But we never do that. Right. When we have a coach who is skilled at asking the right questions, at probing, at challenging some of your fundamental beliefs, it's like the light bulb is going off and suddenly you can see. So let's imagine we started this conversation by saying, let's talk about blind spots. Everybody has blind spots. And so if it's a blind spot, you don't even know they're there. It's a blind spot. You're blind to it, right? And so when a coach can read your journal, suddenly they say, hey, did you see this is a blind spot? And when you can see your blind spot, suddenly you have greater control.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And so, to go a step further, you get to a point where you're aware of your thoughts, you're aware of the impact that they're having on your success, be it in any area. I mean, it doesn't matter. It can feel pretty daunting to try to change your thoughts, because the same thoughts are going to keep. I mean, it's a big deal to have any kind of real thought change that isn't just in the moment when you tell yourself to actually have that kind of become a new habit. What would you say to that? Because sometimes we do get pushback on that.
You know how some people say, oh, you should do, gosh, I forget even the word. You should stand in the mirror and you should
affirmations and
affirmation. That's the one. I'm not a fan of affirmations
Yeah.
because I think that they're a stretch, right? You look in the mirror and you give yourself some positive reinforcement, but then the back of your mind, you're thinking, well, but I don't really believe that.
Yeah.
Like, that's just not true. I'm, making something up for myself that I can't really buy. And so when I look at the whole idea of improving my thinking and changing my beliefs, there's a concept that we use, which is called trading up. So what I want you to do is identify the poor belief and then trade it up for something only slightly better. Only slightly. Why? Because you can believe that. And then slightly better from there. And keep climbing up the ladder of slightly better beliefs. So if I look in the mirror and I'm like, wow, I'm a beauty queen, I should be a model, the back of my head will say, who am I kidding? Right? Like, that's just not a thing.
Yeah.
But if I look in the mirror and I say, hey, like, I look pretty good for my age,
Yeah.
I could believe that. Like, that's okay. I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's the idea. It's you must sell yourself beliefs that you can buy, that you can actually say, yes, that's accurate. That's true. That the issue is we have a lot of beliefs that are not true. Right. So if I look in the mirror and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so ugly. That's not really true.
Right.
Right. I might feel ugly some days, but it's not inherently true. And so what we want to do is teach people to question their beliefs, to say, hey, is that actually true? Because if I go around life thinking I'm really ugly, what happens? I feel bad.
Yeah.
My self-esteem is down. My relationships suffer. My performance at work suffers. Everything suffers.
Right, because your actions are, the decisions you make about what to do next are somewhat based on that. So, you don't go out or you don't go to the party or you don't meet anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
No dating for you.
It's such a fabulous conversation because I think the way you're articulating it is great. And yet sometimes when we say, we are something, but we don't believe it, it can be true. If you're saying, oh, I'm the smartest person, in my company, what if that's true? But then there's this voice in your head saying, no, you're not. Why are you thinking that? I just think it's fascinating to.
Well, and again, trading up. So what we would do with that, if I didn't believe I was the smartest person in the company, I might say I have moments of intelligence. I have moments of smartness. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so what we're doing is we're climbing up the ladder.
Yeah, I love that. I do think a lot of what's out there would have you go from, A to Z with a thought, and that doesn't particularly, it doesn't ring
stick.
true. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, fascinating. And so the negative thoughts, they're in the way that we speak. They're obviously in our heads, helping us to make decisions. They show up all over the place. And so do you have people also just become aware of where and when and how they show up? And then,
yes.
So there's that looking in the mirror and trading up to a better
Well, I
statement.
don't ask people to look in the mirror, but
Okay.
what I do is
Yeah.
when I catch the negative thought, and it could be like, I should be a better mom. I should be a better business owner. I should be making more money. I should be much further ahead at this point. So like right there, I say, put down the stick. Like, stop beating yourself up. It's not working.
Yeah.
You can't get from here to there when you're battered and bruised. You can't. Put down the stick.
Yeah, we do tend to try to go old school and just pressure ourselves or beat ourselves down. And
Exactly.
that's something that, it really is from a different generation. And I guess, maybe you could argue it worked at some point in our history, but it doesn't work now. It probably really, who knows if it actually worked. It was all we had,
Right.
probably. So, yeah, I think where that sort of way of being is still out there, I think that has to be changed. So that's a first.
Yeah.
And I would imagine
There's
if
just so much.
if you're dealing with leaders, I would imagine there is a bit of that, like that. Let me.
There's a lot of that. It's not a bit of that. There's a lot of that. There's no leader that I have encountered that doesn't have a stick. There's no leader that I have encountered that doesn't criticize themselves, that doesn't look at themselves and say, I should be doing better. Right? It just doesn't exist. They are critical internally and externally. So now what? They have friction internally and externally. And then they say, well, I thought this would lead to a happy life. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up because people do that a lot with money as well. I should have all of these things. I'm 50 years old and I should I mean, oh my gosh, the shoulds are just crazy in the money area. And some of that is unavoidable. I mean, if you are affected by a pandemic or a recession or something in a way that you can't control, so you find a lot of people who feel that they're just not where they should be for a number of reasons. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But again, forgiving yourself for any decisions or mistakes that you've made in the past, I think is important. How do you look at that?
100%. And it's having compassion for your decisions, understanding why they came about, but also understanding that you don't have to be making the same decisions over and over again. Right? Like you have choice from here on in. Things can be different.
Yeah. Yeah, that is probably, a beautiful way to wrap up, actually, because people, that is also a blind spot, that you have choice. And just like the guy that you were talking about earlier, he felt that he was on this treadmill and really didn't have an option to get off. But we do. It takes, I don't know, it takes a lot to do that. It's not easy. What are some of the things that you would say it takes to actually make a choice that's difficult?
I think there's two things. I think, there's this concept of radical, personal responsibility. So that's number one, is it's time to take radical personal responsibility. But in order for that to happen, you need to be willing to have and be open to a very, very high level of self-awareness. And it's hard to do on your own. So people live lives, they keep their blindfold on, they keep their blind spots in their place. And so you need to be willing to take off the blindfold. You need to be willing to look at yourself. You need to be willing to take radical self-responsibility. And that it's a willingness. You have to say, I'm ready to do that. And then you need to look around and you need to say, who can help me?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that. I love that imagery of the blindfold on, because despite the fact that we're not getting what we want, or, we're frustrated or whatever, we can still be in a comfort zone with that. And taking that blindfold off and really, developing the self-awareness and the new actions to take, that can take a lot of guts and a lot of, I always find that to be very interesting as well. That we can be in a place we don't like, but it's still more comfortable than trying to go to that place that could make us
people are afraid of change, but it's inevitable. So let's figure out how to work with it.
Yeah, and at least do it on your own terms, making your own choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Kim, thank you. You are a delightful guest and full of a lot of wisdom, and I know that you're really helping people. So if you can let the audience know how to connect with you so they might get some of your help as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you two things. Number one is website. Come look for me. It's frameofmindcoaching.com. Number two is I'm going to give anyone who's listening a journaling assignment. Is that okay with you, Michelle?
Yes, I love that.
Okay, great. So first question that you want to write down is, what do I really, really want? And there are two reallys there for a reason. Think about what you truly, deeply want more than anything, not what you should want, not what is expected of you, not what your neighbor wants for you, what your spouse wants for you, or your parents. What do you truly, deeply want deep in your heart? And then the second question is, so what's stopping me from having it? Write down all the reasons, every single last reason. Those are your beliefs.
Wow.
And that's your starting point.
That's great. That is a great journaling exercise. I will share that with my community as well, because that's a great one.
And if you're super bold, and very few people are, then you can send it to me, and I will personally respond. And my email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com.
Thank you, Kim. That's fantastic. I love that. And I love that question, because I know how hard that one is to answer. What do I want? Simplest seeming question, hardest question to actually answer. Thank you. That's terrific. And for your journaling program, it's there.
Yeah, again, for people who want to journal with a coach, just journaling, go to the Journal That Talks Back You get to journal as often as you want, and there's a coach on the other end who reads and responds to your journal as often as you journal within a 24-hour time period. So you pay a monthly fee and you get to journal as much as you want.
I love
It's
that.
incredible. It's really, really high value.
Yeah, I can say right now without having seen it that it would be of amazing value. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today from Toronto. And I am so happy to have gotten to know you a little better. I'll put the information in the show notes. And for the audience listening, I hope you had a lot of takeaways from today's show. It was a really excellent one. Take some time to think about this. Do the journaling. And answer those questions that Kim asked, because those are powerful questions. I know that from all the years of coaching, and she knows that from all of her years of coaching. So trust us on that and answer those questions. It'll be very insightful and important. And again, you can find us, The Money and You Show, on the Limit Free Life YouTube channel, on the ubngo.com website, also on Roku now, and where else? All the podcast platforms that you might be listening to. Please share it if you enjoyed the show. Leave a review, like it, whatever you can do. And you can find us here every Monday, 7 o'clock it starts, and then it'll be everywhere else right after that. So thanks so much for joining us. You can find me at Michelle@limitfreelife.com and check out the limitfreelife.com website, and you will see all kinds of free resources and information on career transition, entrepreneurship, and money, mindset, and management. So thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Michelle.